Hey guys, welcome back to another beautiful tutorial. Today we are going to be learning how to cut and sew this beautiful bubu gown with this detail in front. Let's get right into it. So the first thing I did was to fold my fabric into two. You see, separately for the front and back, I've cut it out, and I've also measured the length I want to use, which is 57. So at the top, I'm marking out half inches. That is going to serve as the allowance that I'm going to add, the seam allowance that is going to be for the joining of the shoulder. So the first thing we are going to do now is to measure the shoulder. There's no need to measure because I'm using everything. I have 17, so I'm going to be using everything for the shoulder. So the next thing we're going to do is to mark out the width of our neckline. It is 3 inches, and then the depth is 1.5 inches. So I'm just going to connect it with my chalk. So after doing that, we're going to get our shoulder slant. At the edge there, I'm going to come down by 1 inches, and then I'm going to connect from that neckline to the 1 inches. So like that, we've given it a shoulder slant. Then I'm going to add the half inches sewing allowance at the top. Please do not forget to add it if you're not using your pattern paper. So now the next thing we're going to do is to get the length of our sleeve. So the length of the sleeve I'm working with is 11.5. I don't want it to be too big, and at the same time I don't want it to be too small. So I'm just going to measure 11.5 inches. Now on this line we marked, that's the length of the sleeve. I'm just going to use my ruler to just draw a straight line across the fabric. We are going to start our measurement there. So like we usually do, it's going to be our hip measurement divided by 4. The hip I'm working with is 38 divided by 4, that is 9.5. Then after doing that, I'm going to be adding 4 extra inches allowance. 3 inches will be for ease, and then 1 inch is going to be for joining allowance. So after doing this, we're going to extend the same measurement we have at the top. We're going to extend it down to the down part. So you're going to use the same measurement all through. So remember, you're not using your bust measurement this time around. You're using your hip measurement plus 4 extra inches allowance. So I'm just going to measure it and connect it all the way to the bottom. So now we're back at the top. We're not just going to leave the sleeve like this. We're just going to connect the sleeve to the body like this. We're just going to give it a little curve. After doing that, the next thing we're going to do is to cut it out first. So I'm going to do that now. So we are done with cutting that. The next thing we're going to do is to cut out the neckline. Do not forget the width is 3 inches and then the depth is 1.5 inches. So I'm just going to cut it out like this, and I'm going to cut the other part too. Remember that we added half inches sewing allowance to it. So now the next thing we're going to do is from that neckline, we're going to be measuring 2 inches. Yes, that's from the shoulder line. We're going to measure 2 inches, and then we're going to notch it. So we're just going to give it a little sign here with our scissors. The reason for that, you're going to see it in the video. After doing that, we're going to separate the back from the front. So the first thing we're going to work with is we're going to work on the back first. Yes, so we're going to work on the back first. Remember, we mark out 2 inches at the top there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up this fabric like this. So I've flipped it like this. You're going to place it like this with the right side facing up. Please take note, the right side facing up. So now we're going to work on that 2 inches we mark out. We're just going to use our chalk to connect it back to the neckline. So it's going to give it like that slant neckline kind of. So do not forget, if you can, please iron your fabric. You see mine already has that center line already, so it will be easier for you when you iron it. I'm just going to connect from that 2 inches to the center line. So after connecting, I'm just going to cut it. While we're cutting, if you're new here, my name is Lowell Stitches. Please do not forget to like, share and subscribe. What are you waiting for? Click on that subscribe button, like and drop your comment. So we're done cutting, we're going to work on the front neckline. So for the front, while it is still on fold, we are going to mark out how deep we want our neckline to be. So what we're going to do is, for me, I want my neckline to be as deep as 8 inches. Do not forget, you're starting your measurement from the half inches. So on that 8 inches mark, I'm going to measure half inches. So I'm going to connect from that half inches up to the neckline. After connecting it, we're going to cut it out. So after doing this, we're going to place the back fabric, this time around the wrong side facing up, and then we're going to place the front fabric on top of it, just like how it will look when you want to wear it. The front fabric is going to be the front side facing up. So now you notice that the neckline there, it is not equal because of that 2 inches we took out. So here's what we're going to do to make it equal. So I'm just going to arrange it well in the middle line there. That is why it is very important for you to iron it. I'm just going to use my chalk to show you very well. From there, I'm going to mark out 2 inches. That is that 2 inches, the same 2 inches we took out from the back to make it like a slanted neckline. So I'm going to mark out 2 inches from that midpoint of the front, and I'm just going to draw a straight line like this to connect it 2 inches, and then I'm going to use my ruler to connect from that 2 inches at the bottom to the 2 inches at the top. That's the 2 inches we measured and notched. So I'm just going to connect it like this, and after connecting the lines, we're going to cut it out. So after doing that, I'm just going to cut it in a little bit with my scissors at both edges. This will allow us to properly fix the collar while we're doing it. So after doing that, as you can see now, the necklines are equal for both the front and the back. Everything is equal. So to get the length you're going to use from the collar, you measure from that point round, of course, after joining it, round to the very end there. So I'm just going to join it by the shoulder for you to see how we're going to do it. So here it is. I measured from that beginning down to the next end there, and I have about 30 inches. So on fold is 3 inches, 2.5 inches I measured, and the length is about 32 inches. So now the next thing we're going to do is to fix this band to the neckline. Remember, we have a midpoint here, right? So we're going to measure from the midpoint to the right. You see we have 1 inches, and from the midpoint to the left we have 2 inches. The reason why it is not equal is because of that 2 inches we took out. So we have to include our measurement on our band also for it to be balanced, for it to be okay. So on the band I cut out, what we're going to do is this. We're going to be measuring 1 inches on one side of the band. So I'm going to be adding half inches extra sewing allowance. So I'm just going to measure 1.5 inches like this to the top, just a little bit, and then I'm going to use my ruler to slant it. We are doing that because one side is 1 inches, so plus half inches as 1.5 inches. So this is what we have. So I'm just going to cut it out. So after doing that, we're going to place that slant side of the band to the side that we have the 1.5 inches. So we're going to place it like that and sew it round to the other end. So I've sewn it. The smaller part of the band, I sewed it to the side with 1 inches, and that is how I sewed it round. So now we're going to tuck the collar inside and sew it from inside. So while you're sewing yours, I made a mistake which I later realized. the bigger collar will be on top of the smaller collar. Do you get? So the collar on the right is going to be on top of the smaller collar on the left. So you're going to flip it over like this and arrange it. Make sure it is properly arranged. Then you see this half inches allowance we have underneath it. You're just going to sew on it. So now what we're going to do is to draw out the other design we want on the front. So this is how the collar is supposed to look. I have corrected mine. So this is how it's supposed to be overlapped, arranged on each other. So now the next thing we're going to do is to draw out the design we want on the at the front. So you can be very creative with this, whatever shape you want. And if you want to use the exact shape I used, this is how I did it. I'm just going to illustrate. From the shoulder line, I measured to where I want it to end, the design to end. So I measured 17 and a half, and this is exactly what we have here, 17 and a half. You're going to place the paper right at the beginning of the collar like this, and then I measure 17 and a half for the length. So what I'm going to do is on my paper, I'm just going to mark out that line, and then I'm going to measure what it is on the paper. So on the paper it is around 9 inches. So I'm just going to measure 9 inches, and then I connect it with a box like this. Do you get? I'm just going to measure 9 inches. So the width of this square is actually 10 inches. So the length now is 9 inches, the width is 10 inches. So after doing that, we've gotten a square, right? The next thing for us to do is to get that kind of triangular shape at the bottom. So now from this point, I'm going to measure 3.5 inches. I'm going to come in by 3.5 inches. So from there, from that 3.5 inches, I'm going to come down by 2 inches. And then I used my ruler to connect from that point up to the other point here. Do you get it? So now, after doing that, I'm just going to use my free hand to just draw out this curve like this. And that is how I got the design. So after drawing it out, the next thing we're going to do is cut it out. So this is what we have. We're going to transfer this shape, this pattern paper to our main fabric. So this is the fabric I'm using, the Ashoke fabric. I interfaced it with air stay just to give it a little bit of structure. So I'm going to place it on the paper like this, and I'm going to mark out 1 inches allowance all through, round it so that I'll be able to fold it inside to iron. So I'm just going to cut it out. So this is it. I am done cutting, and I added 1 inches allowance all through the side. So I'm going to go and iron it now. So I'm going to fold it in like this by the 1 inches allowance, fold it all through and iron. So after ironing, this is what I have. You see how beautiful it looks already. I'm still going to trim off the excess inside to avoid bulkiness. So what we're going to do is just to place it like this from the beginning of the collar by the right. So you place it like this, you use your pin to secure it, and then you just sew it round. So use your pin to secure it for it not to shake, and then sew it round. Okay guys, this is what we have. It's looking all nice and clean. So the next thing we're going to do is to work on the sleeve. For the sleeve, I'm adding this Ashoke fabric to it. So I just cut out a long band like this. It is not on fold. I'm just using what I have left. It's about 2 inches. I'm using what I have left of the fabric. So you can use cut up to 3 inches if you want to. So for the band, this is how it is. I ironed one tip inside by 1/2 inches. I folded it and ironed it. So I just dropped it. I placed it on the sleeve like this of the main fabric and sewed it straight. And then I top stitched it. So after top stitching, I'm going to turn it over inside. You see how it looks? So I'm going to turn it over inside and sew on it. Guys, have you ever used hemming gum to glue your Ashoke fabric? Did it work? Because I tried to do it, it did not work, so I ended up top stitching it. So that's what I did for both sleeve. And after doing that, you're just going to place your fabric like this. Make sure the sleeve is equal. Arrange it properly. If you want to do it on the floor, do it on the floor. arrange it like this, and then you're going to, let me just trim this off, and then you're going to sew it by the side by 1 inches allowance, because I added 1 inches allowance. So after joining both sides by the seam allowance, the bottom you're going to fold it like this by the allowance you added to it, and fold it into two and sew. Also, for ease of movement while your client or you're working, you can also add a slit at the bottom, not too much though. So you can measure about 7 to 10 inches and stop your sewing there, and that's it. Thank you for watching, guys.